Chinatown, movie review. So this is a classic film. 1974, starring Jack Nicholson when he was in his prime, and directed by Roman Polanski. Roman Polanski is, of course, nowadays more famous for his scandals than for his films, or more well known for the scandals, I think. More in the news for the scandals, at least. So that either has to be ignored when you watch this film or not. You know, maybe you decide you don't want to watch this film because you don't want to see anything connected with such a person. Or you could decide to separate the art from the artist and say you can still enjoy this film even if Roman Polanski did some absolutely morally abhorrent things. Either way, it's an interesting film in terms of cultural history because I think this is the film that gave him the reputation as such a celebrated filmmaker, which is why Hollywood was accused of being too soft on him when the sexual scandals did come out. People were saying, okay, he did some horrible things, but he's such a genius that it has to be forgiven. I'm not saying that's my view, but that was a view that some people in Hollywood were accused of saying. And this film is one of the reasons why he got his reputation as a genius. Okay, no more about Roman Polanski. I'm actually going to talk about the movie itself. So, this is a movie I've been meaning to see for a long time. When I lived in Japan, they had a section for foreign movies, and they had a section for hard-boiled detective movies. And this movie, Chinatown, was in their hard-boiled detective movie section. And I checked out several other movies from that section. I never worked my way to Chinatown at the time, but I always wondered about it. I wondered, first of all, this is a movie from the 1970s, so what's it doing with the hard-boiled detective movies? I mean, those are supposed to be from the 1930s and 40s, right? Second of all, Jack Nicholson is a hard-boiled detective? That doesn't sound right. Jack Nicholson was like the Joker, right? He was more of a clown. And third, Chinatown? I mean, what kind of setting is Chinatown for a hard-boiled detective movie? Well, after having seen this movie, finally, I can now give answers to those questions. So, how can it be considered a hard-boiled detective movie when it was filmed in the 1970s? Oh, by the way, minor spoilers to follow. The answer is, although it was filmed in 1974, it was a retro film at the time that was set in the 1930s and 40s and trying to evoke the images of classic 1930s and 40s movies. I think there was this thing in the 70s where there was a whole bunch of 70s movies that had a retro 1930s feel to them, right? There was the Sting, Paper Moon. There are tons of movies like that in the 70s. I think there was this whole trend. It's interesting to watch it now, though, because by now a lot of the 1970s filmmaking style strikes us as dated. So it's kind of one type of dated filmmaking style trying to evoke another type of dated filmmaking style. But if you love retro stuff, then it's kind of retro piled on top of retro, so to speak. Okay, so second question. What does Chinatown have to do with hard-boiled detective stories? Well, it turns out Chinatown actually isn't in this movie very much. It's in the background for the last scene, and there's a throwaway line. Actually, it's not a throwaway line. It's one of the classic lines, but it's said in an offhand way, as if it would have been a throwaway line, which is something to the extent of, "Leave it, Jack, it's Chinatown." Sorry, I'm quoting from memory, but it's something like that. Now, what does this actually refer to? When I was watching the movie, it actually went right over my head. Leave it, Jack, it's Chinatown, what does that mean? But then I watched the DVD extras. And then the DVD extra, the filmmaker explained where that line came from. He said he had once been having a conversation with a policeman whose job it was to patrol Chinatown. And he said, well, what do you actually do in Chinatown? And he said, well, we try to do as little as possible. And the reason for that is, you had these white police officers who were patrolling Chinatown. They didn't understand the language, and they didn't understand the culture. So anytime there was some sort of an altercation, you know, two people fighting, if they were to try and get in the middle of that, they could arguably make it worse because they don't know who is the aggrieved person and who is the aggressor. So, you know, they could think that they're sorting it out, but they actually could be arresting the wrong person or helping the wrong person, or, you know, letting the thief get away when they think they're helping somebody, you know, something like that. So the idea of leave it alone is Chinatown, meaning if you try and get involved in this, you could just make the situation worse because you don't know who's in the right or who's in the wrong, which is quite clever now that it was all explained to me on the DVD extras. If that hadn't been in the DVD extras, I would have missed it completely. And, you know, chime in here, those of you who have seen the movie. Is it just me? You know, it could be just me. I'm a little bit dense sometimes. Were you able to understand what that line meant, or what the symbolism of Chinatown meant in this movie without any explanation? Were there some hints I missed? I don't know. Third, about Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson does an excellent job as a laconic, sarcastic detective. Right from the opening scene, he's giving news to one of his clients that the client's wife is cheating on him. And in despair, the client clutches at the Venetian blinds. And Jack Nicholson says, "You can't eat the blinds. I just had them installed." You have to see the movie, but Jack Nicholson has a perfect deadpan, dry delivery. And it's like that all throughout the movie. It's, you know, for people like of my generation who remember Jack Nicholson as being the Joker in the Batman movies, you know, kind of the Jack Nicholson overacting a bit, it's very interesting to see him in his prime here, doing great work, and how he became a great film star. Okay, so I realize I've been filming here for a while and I haven't really gotten into the meat of the movie, so let me try and make some comments. The screenplay for this film is actually pretty intelligent. It works on two levels. On one level, it's a murder mystery with a few surprises thrown in along the way. On the other hand, it works as a history of some of the issues that surrounded the development of Los Angeles in the 1930s, specifically disputes over water issues. I'm not sure how everything resolved itself. Maybe I missed something, but I didn't understand why the water company was dumping water in the middle of the night. The only explanation given, that they were helping the orange tree farmers, I thought was actually disproved during the course of the movie by Jack Nicholson's character. If there was another explanation that came up, I missed it. Actually, let me make an addendum to that. I had a friend who commented on my review. He said, I shared your confusion over the water dumping the first 2 times I watched this movie, but there very definitely is a reason for it, and it's tied to the bad for the glass observation. So maybe I'm due to rewatch this movie a few more times to actually find out how it all ties together. I guess a few things did go over my head the first time I saw this. Still, either way, it was a really good story. The pace is a little bit slower than I think modern films, and you know, it's from 1974. It's from a different era of filmmaking, yeah, it moves at a slower pace, and I guess you have to be prepared for that. I must confess myself a member of my generation, and I felt like I would have appreciated something that moved at a faster pace. Sorry, I know I'm a Philistine. But I guess as long as you know that going in, that it's going to move at a slow pace. The storyline itself is really brilliant. Sorry, I'm going to read the full comment that a friend left here on my review because I think this is insightful. He said, "This is a movie I have no difficulty watching once a year, just because it has so many layers. More than that, there are so many scenes where the characters aren't sure what to make of each other or even of their motivation, but where something has to be resolved for the story to move on. It's all Chinatown, where nobody speaks the language, and chances are high that any action will only make the situation worse." So that was insightful. I didn't really pick that up myself, but I thought that was an interesting observation. If you haven't seen this movie yet, I've realized I've given some minor spoilers in this review, but I haven't spoiled anything major. I think you'll still enjoy it. Let me know what you think. And if you have seen this film, yeah, by all means, let me know what you've thought about it and about bits or pieces that I might have missed on my first viewing.